Hello and welcome to the Discover History YouTube channel, and tonight I'm going to take you through three artifacts that we use on a regular basis, and they have an unusual name, and that's why we're going to talk about them. They're known usually as a Tig. Now they appear at the very end, and I mean right at the very end of the 15th century normally, and they go all the way through the 16th century, definitely into the 17th century, and some examples appear beyond that as well. So you're probably wondering, what actually is a Tig? Well, I've got three examples, as I say, to show you. So the first one is this one. And a Tig is basically a cup, a mug, a tankard with more than one handle attached to it. Now, no one's 100% sure why this is. Now, one theory is the fact that long ago people didn't have a massive selection of mugs, tankards, cups and that sort of thing. So, for example, within a household you may have let's say 8 to 10 people. That's normal, big household years ago, but you wouldn't be able to afford cups for everyone. So what you would have is, let's say, 5 of them or 4 of them, and people share from that one cup. And it's easier to have more than one handle on it because it makes it easier to pass it on from one to another. Now, the other theory is that the fact that when you get to the 16th century especially, and more so in the 17th century, more hot drinks are being drank. So if you were going to hand a cup, a mug, a tankard to someone with, let's say, coffee in it or maybe hot chocolate in it, then there's nothing worse than burning your hands handing over that mug. And I'm sure everyone watching this have had that experience of bringing a cup to someone. I've just made a cup of tea, for example, and then you do that very quick balancing act as you try and pass it over. Oh, quick, grab the handle, have that, and that happens, and probably you will drop the drink on the floor. So no one fully knows. Is it because there weren't many in a household, so therefore they were meant to be passed around? Or was it down to the fact that hot drinks were coming in and therefore it did make it easier to grasp it? Because deep down, if it's a cold drink, do you really need another handle on them? And if you think back throughout history, even pre-medieval, cups, tankards, that sort of thing, didn't really have handles on anyway. They were just grasping the hand and drank like that. But when you get to the end of the 15th century and into the 16th and 17th century, Tygs appear. And like I said, they're cups with more handles on than one. This one has 2, which in a way allows you to drink it like that if you wanted to, or pass it on to someone else. But the most common has to be a Tig with 2 or more handles. So you're talking not 2 or more, I mean 3 or more. For example, we have this one. This one is a 17th century example, just like the other one actually. That's an early 17th century one. This is a later one. And as you can see, it's got a glaze on the outside. It's a dark glaze, in fact, which is very common in the 17th century. And like I said, you would drink out of it and then pass it on to someone else. But my favourite has to be this one, which is from about the same period, but it's a bit more delicate, so it's a bit more upper class than anything. And this has your standard 3 handles on. Most of the Tygs do actually have 3 handles on, but saying that, I've seen Tygs with more than 3 handles on as well. So it's quite an interesting form of cup, really. And what you have to remember is throughout history we have used natural materials like horn for drinking out of, and look back through the playlist, you will see a video on that. They have used leather, for example, stitched together and pitched inside to make it waterproof. They've used all sorts of things. One of my favourites is a tankard made out of staves, wooden staves, very much like a barrel in the one that I have is copied from the Mary Rose. But throughout history, clay was used because it was relatively cheap. At the end of the day, what is clay? Well, it's a type of mud basically. But when you start putting glazes on, like these that you see in front of you this evening, and remember these are all 17th century examples, they become a little bit more expensive. But they hold the drink better and they look better than an unglazed cup. If you look at some Roman tankards, for example, they had no glaze on whatsoever, but these are beautifully glazed, and these would have been a bit more expensive. So it's interesting how we go through different fashions through history. We're used to using horn, wood, that sort of thing, and then suddenly we start using more. And like I said, we've had clay ones being used, but when you get to the 17th century, more and more appear with beautiful glazes on, which means they're a little bit more upmarket really. So next time you struggle in the kitchen and you bring in a cup of tea for someone and you're jostling it between your hands and complaining that you're about to burn your hand, what you might want to think about is getting hold of a Tig, something that has more than one handle, usually 2 or more. Most common with 3 on. The interesting thing I find as well is in Worcester, there are quite a few Tygs being made, and archaeologists find them in Worcester, and it is quite an interesting one. Certain areas like Stoke-on-Trent as well start manufacturing a vast amount of them when you start getting into the 17th and 18th centuries. And like I said, by the 18th century, when more people are drinking hot drinks like hot chocolate, coffee, tea, it's very useful having more than one handle. But like I said, we don't really know. Was it just the case of having an extra handle to pass it to the next person? On that note, stay in, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.